your livelihood, then it should come with a warning or some sort of regulation, whether, however great or small. And I'm sure that's going to trigger some people who don't like regulation, like any kind of regulation.
Yes.
But like if other companies have to attach a warning label, then social media probably should too.
Hello and welcome back to The Alchemists, a limited series podcast you'll quickly come to know as the Dumbledore or the Gandalf of State of Social 2024. My name is Andres Lopez Varela, but you can call me A or V. Some people get it wrong, they call me AVL, that's fine too. Any of those three letters in combination is perfectly fine. Today we are recording on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people live at State of Social 2024. And I'm delighted to have what is possibly the most dynamic group of alchemists here today. Based on our conversation so far, we put together a really great group to get into the sort of big messy discussion about the power of the big platforms. Before we dive in, I want to remind you that The Alchemists, the whole series is now live wherever you get your podcasts, so make sure you subscribe to see all those episodes in your feed. And with that, it's time to make the magic happen. Joining me in the studio today is Jeremy Burge, the self-described only writer at Mobile Tech Journal and the founder of Emojipedia. Jeremy, welcome.
Hello. Yes, it's true. I feel it's weird when you start a blog or a site and you're kind of like, I'm the founder, I'm the CEO of my website.
Yeah.
So
well,
currently I'm the only writer at my own website.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Leah Haberman. Leah Haberman is a creator economy expert and author of the very excellent ICYMI newsletter. Leah, how are you?
Good, thank you. Same thing. It's like I'm a founder of a newsletter. Yes. I don't know what that is, but yeah,
no, it's
thank
great.
you.
It's great. And can I say how exciting it was to meet you after having you in my inbox for like so many months.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was great. That's great. And Michael Corcoran, the managing partner at social media consultancy Frankly. Welcome, Michael.
Good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time in the world you're in. Thanks
whatever
for having
time
me.
zone, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Everyone's come from different places. We're not quite sure where we are or when we are.
I don't even know who I am right now.
No. Well, we'll see if we can figure it out through the course of this conversation. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the show. So obviously a lot of this chat about the social media platforms in general focuses on the macro level of what's going on and the trends and the forces and the good and the bad and everything. But I want to flip the script. I want to start a little bit differently. I want to start our conversation by hearing from each of you about what experiences you've personally had on social media that has shaped your opinion about whether these companies are good or bad for society at large. Jeremy, you maybe kick off.
Okay. Big question. You said we're starting easy.
Yeah. That's a softball, guys. That's a softball.
No big deal, but how do these companies affect all of society and all of us?
What was the personal experience you had that sort of,
fair enough.
that clicked your opinion into place?
I mean, I guess without having to give a life story, we all moved through some of the early MySpace, Facebook, all this sort of thing. I think Twitter was seminal for anyone who started being either a social media expert or just someone who loves social media or being on it. I think that will remain for a lot of people the place where you did go, and for some people where they still are. I guess in recent years, though, the thing I've enjoyed the most was joining TikTok in the pandemic, like a lot of anyone over 30 did, and I'm still there. And that it's wild having something where you go there, and that's, in my opinion, where culture is formed now. That's where the memes sort of seem to begin, and then they might make it to TikTok, and I'm not sure to Twitter. Yeah, I'm not sure if any meta platforms ever made a meme. I'm not sure. I kind of, I appreciate that. I appreciate that TikTok was fun, and suddenly it had a better algorithm at the time than a lot of other things. I ended up with a lot of new followers and listeners there who were just watching stuff of me on my boat in the UK, and that was good fun. So it was a change of pace than Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Excellent. Leah, what about you? What was the kind of formative experience about you? Go, oh, this is good or bad or indifferent?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I don't take anything too seriously, and I'm also very skeptical. Was on Twitter, still am on Twitter. It will always be Twitter to me, and I'm going to stay there till the ship goes down.
100%.
But I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, Snapchat, Pinterest. Am I forgetting any? Every day. The only one I don't check every day anymore is Facebook.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm on every platform. I love every platform. I grew up in my career with these platforms, alongside these platforms. But I think at the end of the day, having worked in tech, having worked adjacent to a lot of these companies, is that they are for-profit businesses.
Yes.
And so, God bless Adam Mosseri, and he can get on there every week. And I do admire him for getting on every week and like answering questions and even tough questions. Yeah. But essentially, he can talk about, we advocate for the arts or the artists or creators. The minute that's not profitable, that all ends. So just never assume that they're doing it for art's sake. I think that went out the window probably in like 2012, 2013. These are for-profit businesses. So they are always going to do what is essentially in their best interests. And we are on rented or borrowed land on those platforms. And I love the platforms. I love social, but I never forget that everything could go away tomorrow and there's nothing that you can do about it.
Yeah. I agree, 100%.
Yep.
Michael, what about you?
I think what Leah says is really, really true in not being cynical, but being smart about it. We wouldn't be sitting in this room or speaking to you without social media in existence.
Yes.
It has paved careers for us to be profitable, just like the people who run those platforms at the same time too.
Yes.
Whilst we are doing it for creative purposes, entertainment purposes, catering to needs, the platforms might again take us on a journey about empowering creators and, empowering communications and giving people free speech. But at the end of the day, we're all in it for the money.
Yeah.
I love it. I hate it. I think what's so great about it and what's so challenging about it too is it has become the water cooler moment, the parish pump, and our source of news all at the same time.
Yep.
And it's very difficult to dissect it to be different. And that's a challenge for some people at the moment. But aside from it being for money for most of us, for skin in the game, I think whilst we can put a lot of blame on the platforms right now for how things are unfolding in the world, I think we have to look in the mirror ourselves a little bit too, because they're not producing the content. We are.
Yes.
They're facilitating it and they're using their technology to serve content to what they think or what we believe to think is the right people. But we are the people making the content. We control that. So it's very hard for us to lay all blame on them with how it's evolving into what it is, and particularly X, which I, again, would put a lot of blame on the new CEO for that. But we do have to look in the mirror that we are the ones producing the content, not them.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of agree with that. Like, yes, you can't just blame the platforms, but they do need to take some responsibility for what the algorithm enables and encourages. And I don't think they take a lot of responsibility for that. Again, don't want to come on here like a tech hater. I love social. I love these platforms for connecting, communicating, but they don't take a lot of responsibility for the way that they have shaped. They took over, like you said, the parish pump, but they're charging admission to it and letting all manner of different people access it.
What is the parish pump?
I've never heard that before. I would have said town square, but...
Correct. It'd be like the town square, like back in Ireland or kind of rural countries, the water pump would be your source of obviously water for the entire village.
Is this a term people use in Ireland instead of water cooler moment?
Water cooler moment would be, again, the corporatization of the parish pump. But the parish pump would have been like in the middle of a small village area where everyone would go to fill up water, bring it back home.
I'm going to start using it instead, just to confuse people.
Yeah. That threw me a little bit, but I'm back on track.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's good, thank you. So I think like everyone has similar experiences, like they had a moment or something crystallized their opinion about social media, especially those that work in this strange little industry that we have, for better or for worse. But what do you think is a prevailing feeling about these platforms as a whole right now? If that was a very micro answer, our own personal perspectives, broadly speaking, are we as a society becoming more accepting of these as kind of unavoidable parts of our lives? Are we sort of pushing back more? Are we trying to renegotiate? Have we surrendered? Where do we think we're sort of, in the cycle of overall perspective on this stuff, Leo?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. We've surrendered, but I also think it depends kind of what demographic you're in and when and where you started with social. And it's always new to somebody. Like I teach social media marketing to college students, and I always assume they're going to come in and know everything because, Gen Z, they're digital natives and they know everything. And they come in and they do know about posting to certain platforms and talking to their friends, but they're parts of corporate strategy or just bigger kind of strategic, intentional ways to use social that they're not aware of. And so it's all new to somebody. Like we are very well acquainted with social and the ramifications and the good and the bad. But like if you're a teenager, it's all new to you. So you're having an all new experience. Your cohort, your generation, your demographic is experiencing it from the beginning. And so like I think every person and every generation has a different reaction. Last week Instagram brought out music for profiles, which is kind of like the MySpace, like the music on your profile page.
They've reached back into the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I did a LinkedIn post, and all of these people were like, "Ma, it's MySpace. Like, can't they come up with an original idea?" And I'm like, you know what? Gen Z loves it because for them, it's something brand new, and they're like, I get to choose music that expresses who I am and kind of lets other people know who I am. And so I'm like, don't grumble about it. Like, I get it. For us, it's not exciting, but for somebody who is 15, 16, just getting started, like, that is new and exciting.
Yeah.
So
and that's the group that's going to carry the fortunes of that platform.
Right, right. So I don't know that answers your question necessarily. I think it's just a very layered kind of
well, I mean, I guess
it
makes sense. But you're saying that we have kind of surrendered to its role, that it's essential and integral, and we can't sort of avoid it. But we're sort of where within that surrender, we're trying to do the best we can, just kind of redefine our relationship with them. What does that sound like to you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think an interesting shift is obviously that so many platforms are going back to public first.
Yeah.
We went through MySpace and Facebook for your friends. And of course, you could set them to private or public, but default TikTok is public, Reels is public.
Yep.
And that just changes what you share, right? You do a more curated, the sort of cringe millennial, we're curating our lives. But that's what I see my friends do. They're posting Reels like content creators, but for no benefit. They're not sponsored or they're not, there's nothing going on. And that's no shade to that, you know what I mean? Like, good for you. If you enjoy sharing a Reel and I can see your day in a glossy sort of format, that's fun. But I think that's changed for a lot of people that we've pushed both directions, either into the group chats, you know, those super private stuff, or the public curated stuff, and that middle ground feels weird now. Like oversharing to who exactly? Either just go real raw to your own friends and do whatever, or go public and it's, you know, you're doing it for some kind of career goal or money or the next job.
Yes.
Or just to feel like I'm a good-looking person on the socials doing all my things. So it's just the loss of that middle ground, which is a bit of a shame, but on the other hand, I don't mind. Like, I like getting my group chats now and then seeing my friends pretend to be influencers on the other days. You know, I think that's fun.
I think that's an interesting point about the middle ground.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, certainly like in your experience, Michael, you know, running large brand accounts and creating audiences that have these kind of shared values, if you like, does that middle ground exist for brands? Should it exist for brands, or should they be moving into one end or the other of that conversation? Like Jeremy said, should they be leaning into super polished or super kind of scrappy? What's the right space for them?
There is no right or wrong space. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve with the platforms, who you're trying to reach, and what is the best method to do it. You might have brands that have a heritage to be a positioned in a certain way, look a certain way, present themselves to be a certain way, but even that too is evolving because people's perceptions of brands interrupting their feeds and their spaces become challenging, and they can spot ads or content from brands a mile away. So you can see them actually trying to behave a lot more like people on the internet to try and garner that attention and do it in the most relatable way. Take Marc Jacobs, for example, a luxury brand that you see and you'd associate with, again, luxury, pretty polished, refined, have completely flipped their approach to how they're using some of the platforms right now because they understand that it's not working and they need to show up and present themselves in a way that people will consume it. Because it's such a competitive, fragmented space and attention is very hard to get because you're not only competing with other brands in your category or other brands as a whole, you're competing with other creators. You're not only competing with other creators, you're competing with your brothers and sisters sharing their bottomless mimosa brunches on a Sunday or their mucky dog after a beautiful walk in the park. It's a very hard space to win in, and I don't think it's even a middle ground anymore.
So let's think a little bit more specifically about the platforms themselves. You know, Meta obviously is in this perpetual ebb and flow, and, you know, like you said, you know, profile music, you know, maybe Facebook is the only one you don't check every day, for example, Leah. You know, it seems like it's waiting to lurch from one bad headline to the next. TikTok, obviously, sort of watching briefs we were discussing yesterday. Maybe it'll be banned, maybe it won't. Maybe other countries will follow, maybe they won't. X, Twitter, for those of us who understand that's actually its original name, is kind of morphing into this strange political vehicle for Elon Musk or something like that.
Strange as a word, all right.
Strange as a word. Reddit is moving more and more to the center of like mainstream social media use conversations. You know, whenever I'm looking for a tip on something in my local You know, in my city, I always go to the right Reddit page, and I ask them.
If you told people like 15 years ago that Reddit would be where you go for the normal people, would kind of go.
What?
But now it's probably true that is where it's somewhat sensible answers to things.
Yes.
Every brand that I've talked to this year uses Reddit for social listening, which
Yeah.
to your
Same.
point is like 10 years ago, would you have said like, yes, we do our best social listening on Reddit? Absolutely not.
No.
But it is a fantastic place for research.
One of the most underrated platforms for identifying early trends before
agree.
everybody else.
I agree.
And or checking about what people are saying about your brand.
Correct.
Or I work for a lot of creators, and so going on and making sure like what is the sentiment of the conversation around the creators. There's a lot of snark subreddits on Reddit. So if you're a creator or you're working for a creator, you want to go on and see what is the conversation about, what are people saying.
Yes, yeah. I think it's really interesting how, like, even in marketing a couple of years ago at this conference, the regional head of Reddit came and spoke, and that really changed my perspective as to its role, because I thought it was like, you know, I was like on it before, and, you know, like maybe I was being a bit snarky at times, you know, but sort of understanding the brand opportunity was really substantial there. And he talked a lot about social listening as being part of that. You know, all these platforms are sort of, you know, they're being forced to reinvent themselves for one or many reasons. Some, you know, I guess I'm wondering how much of that reinvention is down to civic pressure, political pressure, and how much of it is because they're losing money or not making enough money. Michael?
It's probably the latter for the majority. It's all about making money at the end of the day. Once they comply or stay on the line close to what policies or governments roll out, they'll push the boundaries as much as they can.
Yeah.
They obviously have a duty now because they are maybe the source of a lot of information. Zuckerberg, I think, came out yesterday saying he regretted suppressing certain information on COVID on behalf of the Biden administration. It seems like he's taking a turn on whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, and he wants to pull back his views on giving and empowering more free speech. So it is it's for profit mainly, but I'm sure
social license is still an important
yeah,
consideration.
well, again, it's trust for people and everybody else, and more importantly, again, it goes back to profit, but trust for the brands who want to spend advertising on these platforms.
Yes.
If they cannot trust the platforms and what's going on, and it's not being protected in the right way, they're not going to spend their money. And strangely enough, maybe some crazy nut job is going to then try and sue them for not spending their money on these platforms.
I think the other thing that's underrated is moderators, which again, speaking of Reddit, there's admins, there's moderators, there's just people. They can make bad decisions, but it's not the platform owner trying to algorithmically get rid of, you know, bots and hate speech. There's real people, and you could argue with them, you could try and get on their side, and because Reddit's split into different subreddits, there's different moderators for different areas that have different sensibilities.
And different expertise, and they understand the context of the conversation.
So, like, bring back forums. I guess, I don't know, that was sort of, you know, forums had rules and etiquette, and if you were on a forum about activism, then there'd be a different set of rules than a forum about tech issues or politics.
Yeah.
And
or KitchenAid blenders. There's a really wild subreddit for KitchenAid equipment that I maybe spend too much time on.
Wild stuff.
I think you'll see that, and it is starting to emerge that these platforms are coming back and new ones coming through. Like Discord is a fascinating place that even I'm trying to figure out right now as a grey-haired millennial, probably with the mind of a Gen Xer. I don't really know, but I'm in Discord groups where I'm trying to understand it. But you can see Gen Alpha or younger side of Gen Z, to your point earlier, their desire to share within smaller groups rather than publicly, and how that's even being moderated in the ilk of Reddit and old school forums. It seems to be coming full circle. The technology is changing, but the interest or the desire, what people like and enjoy, is coming full circle again to the MySpace music. You know, it skips a generation, but it becomes trendy again. Yeah. Much like bell-bottom jeans right now.
Well, to your point about attracting advertisers and talking about audiences, like that is a big motivator for the platforms, is that the way that they're evolving, like you're not going to have the advertisers if you don't have the audience there.
Yes.
So I think trying to evolve and adapt to each new generation so that they don't become irrelevant, I think that is a big driver, even probably more so than, I don't know, whatever, like political regulations. Also, like in the US, there's very little regulation, I think, as opposed to other places in the world. That has maybe less impact for us in the States.
Definitely, because when Threads came to town, it didn't get to Europe for probably 4 or 5 months after it was launched.
Yes,
we did find ways to get access to it with ATP downloaders, but that got switched off quite quickly. So it is very true.
Yeah.
The life cycle, I think, is important as well, and it connects to a few things. That when any of these platforms start, obviously they need to grow a user base. So most of their time and effort is letting anybody in. It's just about the numbers and getting consumption up to a certain level. And then they go call brands and they go, hey guys, we've got this beautiful free audience here. Why don't you come and play? We'll give you lots of organic reach and ways to actually engage with these people much better than any other platform or any form of marketing in the world. So in come the brands. Then when they realise they have enough of this and their investors come knocking in the door and they go, hey guys, we've given you billions of dollars. You need to actually give us some of it back. Great. How do we do this, guys? Let's bring in advertising now. In comes the advertising. We suppress the reach. We still have this audience that are really active and rich, but brands don't have to pay. That's normally the life cycle of how it goes. And what's important with that as well is it's at the point where when they get enough advertising spend, that's when they start to make decisions on safety and moderation.
Yes.
It doesn't exist at that point because they don't have the tools and it's not their priority and focus. We've seen that with Facebook. We're seeing it with TikTok now. TikTok is the Wild West. Has been since its existence, and it's not just on safety, but it's also on copyright infringement and music.
Yes,
which is again a ticking time bomb waiting to explode for brands who are using licensed music on that platform. And they're only starting to make the fixes now. Why? Because they're making enough revenue to first pay back investors, or again the shareholders, and now they actually have money there to start building the other things that are now important. They should always be important, but they're only important after they actually start to make profit.
Yeah. The life cycle you mentioned is really interesting, and I think it's a point maybe that we should talk about. The rise and fall we've seen of many, there's, different social mediums. Some of them are more resilient than others, whether through their business model, whether because they're the first movers, whether because they're, serving a particular community. I'm curious to know, considering collectively your sort of, long and deep collective knowledge and experience in this stuff, can this ecosystem ever sort of reach an equilibrium with society where it's kind of considered almost like a utility, like it's sort of the politics is removed and it truly becomes just the pipes? Like, can it ever get to a point where, because utility companies, make money, some of them more profitable than others, could this be the utilities of the future?
I mean, that's the idea behind, say, Mastodon and the Fediverse, which isn't successful mainstream. It's got a very active set of nerds on there. No offense, I'm a nerd too. But there's a lot of iOS developers on there. There's a lot of info security people and some sciencey people there. But and it's not that hard to sign up. But nonetheless, there's just no interest from mainstream audiences to be there. And so I think it's not the only example, but I just can't see examples of it working on the pipes. So, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I would say, in Asia, they set up, a lot of social platforms were set up as utilities. Use this to pay your bills, use this to talk to your friends, use this to order a cab, and the one app that kind of rules them all.
WeChat's the operating system of life, isn't it?
Right, exactly. But I think that was kind of baked in fundamentally from the beginning, whereas in the US, with all of these platforms, especially Instagram, for example, it was all about Facebook was about connecting and communicating kind of with your friends and family. Instagram was for the love of the arts and self-expression. And those are big parts of, why or how we regard social media. Utility was not baked in. So I think it is very hard. The DNA of an app gets baked in pretty early. And I think that's also why TikTok is having a really hard time shifting to an e-commerce app, because they came out in the States as essentially an entertainment app. TikTok could have a fabulous app career as an entertainment platform, or they could have gone on to be a streaming platform, for example. People go to them for entertainment, and it is very, very hard to turn a corner, change course, several years later, and all of a sudden say, no, now we're, come shop here. Especially in the West, we already have Amazon, for example. We don't need an app that you can order stuff and get it overnight, whereas I think that's how it fundamentally started in China, and so I think it's been much easier for them to have those types of apps. I don't think
it's a thing.
No, I don't think it'll ever become a utility.
It's causing friction already on TikTok. They're trying to be QVC now, and it's really disengaging people. They're getting frustrated. Creators are getting frustrated that they're not getting the reach or the performance that they were in the past. Even brands aren't getting it because they're pushing live and shopping down people's throats.
Yeah.
It could exist, but they probably need to separate the app.
Yeah.
And it could do quite well as a separate app because they are pumping a lot of money into it. Like they have.
Well, isn't that then just Temu or something then?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially. That's their
But is Temu, because I don't shop on Temu, is Temu entertainment-based sales? Or is it just
shopping?
stuff?
It's just shopping.
Yeah,
Because that is TikTok's secret sauce, right? Is that it's fun to watch and it's
Yes.
entertaining. If they could find a way, I think they're trying to duplicate what they've already done in China and incorporate shopping into there. But especially, and speaking for the States, I guess, just because, I can't speak for the entire Western world, and I probably can't speak for all of America even.
Elon can,
but
though.
But we like
He's on the
a
next
soft
episode.
sell. We like to buy into a lifestyle. We want to see the product incorporated in your beautiful background and like in your life. We want to know how this product helped you have a better marriage, made your like girlfriend, boyfriend happier, like made you look better, made you have more fun, whatever. Like we want to buy into a lifestyle. We don't want to simply buy a product just because
It's functional.
It got held up on
somebody's
TikTok
yeah,
and said,
exactly.
"Here's a
Like
bag,
it's cheap
here's
and
another
you're
bag."
yeah, it's like $4, buy
Yeah.
it now or whatever. That does not appeal in general to an American audience. So yeah.
It's a weird shift as well that when people discuss TikTok shop, that's so hard to say, that it's algorithmically different around the world. So people might hear you, Michael, complain about it. I was just in the UK recently. It's so much more prevalent there than, say, in
it's
Australia.
huge, yeah.
So the feed
It's
is when
huge,
people
yeah.
say, oh, it's 50% TikTok shop. And you might think that's exaggeration. It's not over there, but it's here.
That's
they
true.
haven't
That's a
rolled it
really
out,
good
and it's
point.
hard to make these discussions global when every country gets a slightly different version.
The crazy thing is, though, if you do embrace it, you will get rewarded for it. So if you are a specific type of brand in a specific type of category where you do need to sell product in a certain way, if you potentially embrace it, it could be of value because you're seeing beauty brands like Marshall. Is it Marshall? They were the first brand to deliver 1 million revenue on a TikTok live in a single day because of their investment. You've got a second one, which is a Lux Collective, which is a pre-loved luxury brand who are absolute storming right now where they're doing bidding and negotiations on their live broadcast for secondhand luxury goods, and they're actually selling and monetizing in a very clever way. So I can see why they're pushing it.
Yeah.
I can see its potential, but for most platforms, it mightn't work. And I do agree. I think it's finding that mix of how you can connect being entertained and seeing the lifestyle or being entertained by seeing people's lifestyles, and then a frictionless connection to try and purchase it. I do understand why people would like it. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing. It's definitely a cultural thing right now.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, right? And I think this group's going to be okay with that. Why the hell do we think that we have the right to be so outraged by what these companies do? These are, as we said, as you said, Leah, they're private corporations, for-profit businesses. They're not public institutions. They're set up and run to make a profit. They're not there as service delivery, like as government or other public bodies might be. And I know this is nothing new, but some sectors of the internet, obviously, and businesses would have this opinion. I think part of me considers what they're saying is valid, I guess. But I'm asking you, can we make an argument on behalf of the platforms that speaks to a sense of fairness or equality in the way they're treated compared with other big companies? Is that morally defensible at all?
Okay, well, when you talk about comparing to other big companies, there are warnings on cigarettes, right, about the harm that they have to your health. And there are very real studies about the harm, like especially to teenage girls, to the harm of their mental health and well-being that these platforms have. So if you're saying...
Government-imposed regulation, government-imposed, right?
Right.
They didn't put them there willingly.
Wait, government-imposed
On
on
like,
the
warning
cigarettes,
labels.
you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if we're going to treat them just as any other big company, and if we're looking at a company and like cigarettes, for example, that have to have a warning label, or I don't know, like in the States, you get these drug ads, and at the end of the drug ad, there's always like may also cause like diarrhea, blindness, death, anal leakage, like all these crazy things. And it's like, okay,
It's
if you're
not what
gonna
I thought I'd hear in a podcast at 9 o'clock.
I'm sorry. But this has gone into like this has gone off a little bit. If companies that have an impact on your health and your well-being, possibly your your livelihood, then it should come with a warning or some sort of regulation, whether however great or small. And I'm sure that's going to trigger some people who don't like regulation, like any kind of regulation.
Yes.
But like if other companies have to attach a warning label, then social media probably should too.
Michael?
Agree.
Yeah.
Platforms should be held to account, and so should its users. I think even the infrastructure of holding everyone to account is not right.
Yeah.
The warning should be there. They should be reprimanded for things that go wrong in the way that everyone else would be, and would be dragged through the courts and penalised, but also the users. Verification to set up an account and to have anonymity on social is good and bad at the same time.
Yeah.
But if people are going onto the platforms intentionally doing things that are harmful, that should be held to the same account from a legal point of view as if you did it on the street. So I think everybody needs to be held to account.
So, I mean, what do you think, Jared? Like, is there a morally defensible argument to say we're not technically breaking the law? We're sort of, we're our own business. Can anyone get on board with that?
You could make the
Aside from,
argument,
like, the lawyers,
I
I
suppose,
guess?
if you're saying we're not breaking the law, but that just invokes the idea that maybe we should just regulate better, right?
Yeah.
That if you're not breaking the law, then I guess technically, fair enough. It's not to say it's morally good to do, but that we live in a society, and if we feel like the laws aren't strict enough on hate speech and whatnot, then it's important that our respective countries do have regulation to prevent that. So while I'm not defending their right, I think it's somewhat reasonable to say companies should operate within the law, but also we should make laws and regulation that match our societal expectations, that we're not organising hate speech rallies on these platforms.
So why is it so hard then to regulate?
Try regulating speech, right? It's so nuanced. Jokes. Was that really a joke about something? Are you genuinely inciting violence? Are you in a group chat? Something that might be fine between friends is not fine publicly. I mean, it's the biggest can of worms we have in the world, right?
Yeah.
Speech is everything, and how do you write one set of laws? I'm for regulation, but I do not, as someone who was on a committee to approve emojis, and that was difficult, trying to come up with something that globally were useful and yet were, functionality-wise, they could be used well, but they weren't necessarily infringing on a cultural group's identity necessarily. It's just tough writing regulation. I don't want to stand up for politicians here, but I don't want to be the one that has to write that regulation, even though I believe it is fundamentally a good thing.
But it's literally put on steroids, though. At least with free speech, if you stand in the middle of a stadium that we're in right now that is practically empty, there's a limit to who can see it. When you do it in these spaces, it's completely different.
Yep.
And that's where it gets difficult.
So, I mean, speech is definitely, I'm pro free speech to a certain extent. But for me, it's more the harm that it causes, like to the mental health, especially of teenagers, that I just think is really critical that we have to address. And it's not about censoring people. It's about looking after young people who are not equipped yet to deal with or understand the ramifications of being on these platforms. And so it's not only putting the warning label on the social platforms, but somebody was mentioning this yesterday, talking about like incorporating education into school. Like, absolutely.
Social media literacy.
Social media literacy. And somebody had said to me, like, you can't get a driver's license and you can't get a gun without first having training. And these are things that, like you could crash a car or you could kill somebody. And social media has such an impact on especially certain groups' health, that there should be some sort of training or education, and not just like, oh, great, you're 13 and you're probably actually even younger because you've kind of lied about your age.
The box.
Yeah, you've ticked the box, and it's like, here you go, access to the internet and everything that's on it.
Here's a box of knives. Go have fun.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, That's great. I'm glad that you didn't rip me to shreds on that last one, although it came close. We have just enough time left to play Fast and Loose with your opinions before we call it a day.
Loose opinions, that's scary
Fast
for
and
me.
Loose opinions,
We haven't
that's right.
given enough opinion already.
No.
You want more? Okay.
I want more, Leah. I want more. So these questions are meant to make you a little bit uneasy or provoke some thought. But the whole point is you can be fast and loose. Your Alchemist, safe space, no ramifications, right? So I'm going to ask you a
Who's
question.
listening then? Is it just us?
Just us. It's just us and Josh, who's producing on the board.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
And then, I'll ask one of you to answer it, and the rest of us can agree or disagree or like flip the table or whatever feels right at the time, okay? So I'm going to start with you, Michael. So you're an alchemist, and the masses come to you for insights about what the future holds. What is the biggest internet trend that you see coming to an end in the next year or so?
Biggest trend into coming to an end.
Wrapping up, it's winding down.
X.
Yeah. Hopefully, from your lips, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it though. The problem is I'm sad to see it go,
Yeah.
but unfortunately
I'm sad too.
it's probably going to be the right thing to do, and the impact I think the US presidential election is going to have on how long it survives.
Yes.
If red wins, it's probably going to stay around for longer. If blue wins, you're probably going to see Mr. Musk probably been dragged through every court around the world and reprimanded for some of the things he has had his hand in or his voice in.
Yep.
That is probably going to force his hand to either wind down and sell on.
Yep.
X, I'd love to see it stay, but not in its current state.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like the Twitter that we knew and loved
It's gone.
It's gone. It's
And,
left the
so
building.
there's enough. I know everyone's got their own groups, so there's enough interesting people that I like who are just not there anymore as objectors to
I agree.
the owner of the platform, and they're not coming back. So there are some niches that are very active and still going on or dwindling, but while there's no great replacement yet, Threads is a bit lame, but it's doing what it can. Look, yeah, I agree that X is it's on a downward trend indefinitely.
But it's one thing to note as well that we need to remember we are also in an echo chamber like X.
Yes.
Like 80% or a little bit more of the world are not on it.
Yeah.
Never see it, never experience it. It's
They just see snippets on the TV news. at
correct.
night. That's it. Yeah.
Angry man shouting in small echo chamber
Yes.
again causes riots.
Yes,
So
No, I think that's Truth Social. Isn't it?
there's a huge part of the world who don't even know what's going on there, which right now I'm very thankful of.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, Leah, as an alchemist, your teachings are considered a generous gift to the world, except when you get something wrong, right? In your career, what's the biggest thing you've been wrong about?
Oh, actually, I have been. Okay, I've made a lot of good predictions, which have gotten me to where I am.
Yeah.
Like moving from digital media to social to influencer, and now kind of creator economy in
Yes.
general. However, back in like 2014, 2015, I was obsessed with Snapchat at the time. That was kind of like the first iteration when Snapchat was originally very
Yes,
popular.
yes.
Snapchat developed stories. Like Evan Spiegel was very visionary. A lot of really good things have come out of Snapchat. Instagram at that time decided to launch stories.
Yeah.
So like think back to a time like stories did not always exist on Instagram. I can't remember, it was 2016 maybe. And at the time I was so enamored of Snapchat and I thought, oh, it's never going to work. People are going to call them out on their bullshit. Like nobody's going to accept stories on Instagram. People are going to say like, no, if I wanted stories, I'd go to Snapchat. I go to Instagram for the grid, the feed, something else.
Yep.
Wow, I was wrong on that. I mean, it's essentially like, other than DMs, it's the most used section of Instagram.
Yeah.
So luckily, like it only took me about 6 months because it was adopted pretty quickly
Yes.
by Instagram users. And I think that was, I don't always credit Adam Mosseri and Mark Zuckerberg with a lot of smart decisions, but like that was a very smart decision to incorporate stories. They saw that it was working really well on another platform. They incorporated it, and I learned pretty quickly that that was probably the biggest kind of mistake or like prediction that I got wrong in the entirety of my career.
I would say you weren't the only one, probably.
Yeah.
Jeremy, okay.
I'm nervous. The pause you do before the question and then you drop on.
As an alchemist,
Yes.
you make a magical compound in your apothecary that can wipe out one of the social mediums just like that. Which one do you use it on and why?
Social medium, as in one of the companies?
One
We're
of the
talking Facebook,
platforms, one of
TikTok,
the
Instagram.
TikTok and Instagram. I mean, like maybe
Selfish.
let's assume like X's.
Okay.
Let's assume Michael's right. X is on its way out in the next 12 months. You maybe don't want to waste that one dose on that.
True. I mean, I would be tempted because then it would mean that because there are some communities still on there that I would like to be elsewhere. So
Yeah.
by removing X, it might move them to a platform
Yeah.
I'd be comfortable on. But otherwise, selfishly, I would say Snapchat because I'm not on there and I missed the boat. And I joined TikTok early because I saw, I just didn't understand Snapchat. I was the wrong generation,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, I didn't understand TikTok to start with, but I'm like, I got to be there from not day one, but
Early on.
later on. So
Yeah.
maybe selfishly we'll get rid of Snapchat so I can pretend to be
I
relevant.
think that's a great choice. It's a great choice.
I'll just say in Snapchat's defense, I'm still a Snapchat stan. They have the best filters on Snapchat. I have a snap streak with my kid, and we're at 500 days now. And they have the best filters. I don't go on to use it for anything else. I don't watch stories. I don't watch brands on Snapchat. But in terms of DM communicating and taking photos with filters,
Yes.
they rule the game
It's
still.
great.
It goes back to the earlier point. That's where Gen Alpha are currently experiencing social for the first time. They're using their parents' Snapchat accounts to DM kids of other parents, their friends, using filters and the other features within it.
Yeah.
It also has a really great ad product, by the way.
Right.
So from an advertising point of view, Snapchat
Is it? Because that's what we always hear is that they haven't figured out advertising as well as the other platforms.
They haven't figured it out as well as others to scale it to make a lot of money, but the reach and the engagement on their advertising, certainly in the UK and Ireland,
Quality.
has always performed really well, really great ROI, similar to Pinterest, similar to Reddit, as alternatives for really good paid advertising.
Look, I want to say thank you. This is too big a topic to fit into a 30-minute chat, but you all gave it a red hot go.
Are you going to say this is the best one you've done throughout the whole...
This is the best
Clearly.
one we've done
Clearly,
throughout
and-
the whole.
What did you call us?
series.
Dynamic.
And have you said
I like
that to everyone?
No. Yes. No. Maybe.
You
no.
better edit it out in the rest of them.
Yeah. No. Maybe I'll edit it into some of them. Yeah. You'll have to listen to
We'll
find
do a
out.
ranking, do a leaderboard.
Thank you, Michael, Leah, and Jeremy, for joining me in the studio today. I hope you enjoy the rest of State of Social. Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you.
There is plenty more to wrap your ears around on The Alchemists, including heaps of in-depth chats with this year's State of Social speakers. So make sure you follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, give us a 5-star review and tell a mate, or 2, or 3. Tell your mum. The Alchemists is a co-production of State of Social and Creative Fix. The show is produced by me, Andres Lopez Varela, and Aaron Matthews from Creative Fix, with additional production support by Cal McLean. Meg Coffey is our executive producer. On behalf of all the Alchemists, I'm ALV. I'll catch you next time.